Hello, everyone. This is Tara with Tara's Tuesday Talk, and I am delighted to be with you here today. Forgive me, I'm going to have some notes because we have a very important conversation for today. And I would love for you to comment on wherever you're watching these posts and ask questions, engage in this conversation because it is a very important one. And I would just love to hear your thoughts and be able to answer any questions for you. So today we're going to dive in while we're right in the middle of this 100% participation campaign that we have been invited to join and do with Orphan Myth. If you haven't seen or heard any of that, you still have plenty of time. We're right in the middle of it. It's going to go till April 8th. And this campaign in itself is just a super important conversation about breaking some orphan myths and what we can do as the body of Christ to really buckle down and bring some solutions to the orphan crisis and work together in a way that's going to have a bigger impact. So this campaign is going on right now, as I mentioned, and we've been chatting about some of the orphan myths. They've highlighted 3 in their social media platform. And we've shared about all of those. So if you've missed those conversations, just go back and look for those last several Tuesday talks, and you can dive into those orphan myths and see how we discuss breaking those orphan myths together as a team. But today I wanted to talk about some myths that are very specific to international work in orphan care. As we've been doing this for about 12 years now, have heard several conversations, very valid conversations about how we perceive working internationally in foreign countries, third world countries, in this sector of orphan care, and how as a church and individuals we can be a part of that, and why we would even want to be a part of that and spend our energy and time and funds and things like that. And so I wanted to tackle some of those conversations. I'm by no means an expert, and this perspective I want to present to you is totally from just our personal experience in the mission field here in Honduras, Central America. And so there may be plenty more other conversations to tag onto this, but this will get us started, right? And maybe help get some of your own thought processes rolling, so you can look for your space in caring for the orphan overseas. And so our first myth I want to discuss is this doesn't affect me. And so since, in the U.S. we have our own problems in foster care, we have our own problems in the orphan crisis, kids that need homes, foster families that need supported, even small group homes, that need care as well. It is a valid conversation to say, why should I spend my energy overseas, for orphan care overseas? Some of us just naturally have a heart for that. We feel that calling, and so it just comes out naturally. Others of us, we really have this hesitancy to say, hey, I only have so much time, I only have so much funds, why do I want to shift any of that overseas? And so it's a valid conversation. I'm going to give you one perspective of the why that you can process for yourself. Obviously, we're all called to dive in deeper into certain areas. And so if a local foster care organization or orphan care advocacy efforts in the U.S. Is what you're called to more, that's totally makes sense. Our conversation is not to shift you away from that at all. It's maybe just to show you a little bit of God's heart for calling us to a foreign field in our efforts as well, through advocacy, support, and things like that, and being a voice. And so let's address this doesn't affect me for orphan care overseas. And we're going to talk Honduras specific. So Honduras is in Central America, right under the U.S. And one of the reasons it does affect those living in the States is obviously the border issue. Now, we're not going to dive into the political side of the border issue at all. So we're going to talk about it from the perspective of the families. So there are many, many causes for a family or an individual to go to the border, cross the border illegally, and all of those things. We're not going to get into all of those. But there is a large quantity of those families that cross the border because of the lack of resources here in Honduras, and they're just desperate to get what they need to support their families. And so, for example, here in Honduras, there is no unemployment check. There are no food stamps. There's just not a system for family support when they enter a dire, desperate moment of their lives of not having what they need. And so they don't have those community resources available to them. And so literally they may be on the brink of starvation. They may have just tried everything. They may even be running for their lives because of gang-related issues. And not themselves being in a gang, but them personally having witnessed maybe a murder or something in their neighborhood, and so now the gang is after them. There's various reasons. We've actually experienced and walked alongside several families that have had these exact causes for them wanting to go or for having gone across the border. So for example, we had one family we got to partner with in family preservation for a season that he did flee because he had witnessed a crime, a gang-related crime, and literally had tried everything to find a safe spot for himself and his family, and to no avail. And so he actually fled, left his family. He actually fled for his life. Unfortunately, the crossing over the border is very dangerous, and he had an accident and lost a leg. Won't get into all the details, but when he came back, he was actually in our program for a season, and we were able to work with another organization, get him in a safe place. He didn't know we existed. He didn't know this other organization existed when he fled, but somehow we all got connected when he was deported back, and we were able to get them to a safe place and help him find a job that he now would be able to do. And so they're an independent family now here in Honduras. So that's just one example of thousands and thousands of different variations of this story. And then, so obviously this does affect the citizens of the United States as we deal with this, border thing, available jobs, things like that. But seeing it from the perspective of a family in crisis, maybe that can kind of, open up our understanding. And then we've even had children in our foster care that have been deported without their family back to Honduras. And they have to do family tracing to find their family in Honduras, and they're in this season of they don't know where this child's family is here in Honduras, and they've been in our foster care program. And so these children that end up in the States without their family, or end up here without their family because their family's in the States, like all of these factors, do affect, obviously, the United States because of our closeness, our proximity as a country. And so literally this boils down for a ton of those families, the majority of those families, big part of this border issue boils down to family preservation. How can we support these families where they are here, like we did for this gentleman, and in such a practical way that allows him to stay here and provide for his family? Again, because there is just a lack of resources from the government, from the welfare system, that support needs to be put in place. And so that's one of the myths we want to break here with this doesn't affect me. Well, in reality, if we can funnel our efforts to family preservation here in Honduras as we do in the Identity Mission Family Preservation Program. Literally, it's so inexpensive to step in for emergency support for these families as little as $100 a month. Actually, it can be a lot less than that. That's probably our top. That's probably the most it costs us is about $100 a month to step in, give emergency support when the families hit that bottom in that crisis, and then help them get independent and find resources within their neighborhood, or just start to provide them, through the local churches and things like that. So building the community resources, stepping in when these families are in a crisis so they don't have to feel like they have to take that desperate solution of crossing a border to a wealthier country to provide for their family. That's something as little as $100 a month out of our pocket can, totally divert that flow of at-risk families from taking the choice of crossing the border to taking the choice of being connected to an organization like Identity Mission that can help them. And every family we've met, again, I've mentioned my experience, but every family we have met is like that. Like they want to stay here, they want to support their family, they just do not have other options, and they feel that desperate need. So how else does this affect us in the U.S.? For foster care specific and vulnerable children that are separated from their family. So for children specific is that perspective is that 60% of the children that age out of the orphanages in Honduras actually return to a life of poverty or crime. whatever their family came from, because again, they leave, there's no community support, very little follow-up from the orphanages they grew up in. It depends on the orphanage, obviously, but the general efforts that we've seen is that you're 18, you're on your own. And so these kids return to that cycle. Usually a gang picks them up because they're looking for belonging. They're looking for a family of some sort, and so they're super vulnerable to becoming a part of a gang. They're super vulnerable to becoming involved in drugs, prostitution, things like that, because literally they have no connection. They have nowhere to get planted. They don't have any community. They've been secluded in these orphanages. So these orphanages, have walls around them. They usually have the church on campus, the school on campus. These are large institutional homes that they've grown up in, oftentimes since birth. And so they have no connection to the outside world. They don't know how to go to the grocery store, to the bank to get their tire changed. We told a funny story of Jorge and some kids he was hanging out with a while back, and literally the kids were just like shocked to learn how to change a tire because they had a flat tire on we're going to an event, and they had a flat tire, and Jorge had to change the tire with them, and they literally, it was like 5 teen boys were just like, this is how you change a tire, cool. But they had no concept of that because they hadn't lived in the world. They hadn't lived in their communities. They weren't connected to a community church. So as they aged out, they had no connection. And so that obviously just super vulnerable to being recruited by a gang and fulfilling that need for belonging and purpose, obviously in a very bad way. And so very well known to many, the gang issues and the drug issues in Honduras trickle into the United States. Very well known to most people. Again, I'm not an expert in all the drug issues going on, but it's obviously obvious to anyone who lives in either or, that goes up and down. And so 60%, that's a crazy amount so 11,000 children living in orphanages in Honduras right now. To consider 60% of those are going to be a part of that gang and drug trafficking issue that trickles into the United States, that's huge. And so that alone, for me, as a U.S. citizen, I would want to be like, oh, how can I invest in preventing this and making that statistic lower? So that's just another perspective of how this does affect me as a U.S. citizen, that if I can invest something in some way that keeps that 60% down or out of that statistic, so I'm helping prevent those children becoming a problem, a part of that global issue of gangs and drugs and all of that. And literally, it takes giving them that connection to their community, a permanent family, and you don't have that issue. That issue's erased immediately. And it's a prime time in Honduras because foster care is new. And we literally can keep kids from the door of an orphanage because of the new foster care program, the growth of that. And so being a part of that is just huge, a part of this moment in history for Honduras with Identity Mission and doing foster care. We're going to dive into that a little bit more in our next myth, but right now. But that is, just a huge opportunity to literally change the lives of, these children that have the opportunity to either enter an orphanage or prevent that by putting them into foster care and helping with reintegrations or adoptions and getting them permanent family. It's cut and dried. So that's how orphan care in Honduras does affect those living in the States. And I think, again, just to kind of come back to why should I be involved in international orphan care, we can just kind of come back to the verse we dove into a while back in our advocacy series for Tuesday Talks, was Acts 1:8, where the Lord just told us, be a witness here in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth. And so I do feel like we're called to all of it. We're called to invest in our nation, in our community, and we're called to invest internationally for the cause of Christ. And so this is part of that, find our local, find our national, and find our international. I do feel like that's the call for the Christian when we're looking at, our calling. And so let's dive into specific orphan myth internationally number 2. And this is that the concept that foster care is already pretty much a broken system, perceived as a broken system in the United States. Why are we going to support it in another country? And again, valid. There's a lot of issues in foster care, in the United States, and I think this campaign is all about tackling that and discussing that. And so, why build it in another country? And so I really want to tackle and attack this myth, because living here, having volunteered and worked in orphanages for 8 years, and seeing the situation that kids were forced to live in, I just want to smack that myth out of the way and tell it has no right to be here. The situations in orphanages in Honduras, if you could see them and witness them alongside of us, it's unbelievable. When we worked in the government-run orphanage years and years ago, which is what brought us to the journey of foster care and finding a different solution, there was things I saw that I just couldn't even tell people about afterwards. They were so horrific. And so while there are some healthier orphanages here, some smaller ones which are doing a great job, for the big picture of Honduras, there's a lot of large institutional orphanages, and it is just not okay that we're allowing kids to live in those situations. And so not providing an alternative like foster care is literally saying to a child, you don't deserve any better than this orphanage that we're providing. And so while foster care, maybe isn't perfect, it is such a step up from growing up in an orphanage. It allows children to develop correctly because they have a one-on-one caretaker. They can learn to attach so that later in life they can have a spouse and attach to their spouse, and have kids and attach to their kids. Literally, that is stripped away from them when they grow up in 100+ orphanage with kids, 100+ kids in an orphanage here in Honduras. They don't have a one-on-one caretaker. They may have 50 different caretakers by the time they age out or more. And so especially for age 3 and under, so babies to 3, they develop based on the response. So I cry because I'm hungry, I get my bottle, response, my brain connections did what they were supposed to do, and I grow and I develop. And so if you'd like to know more about this, we have a whole training on it that we can do virtually with you. We'd love to help you understand why it's so horrific for us to allow children to grow up in orphanage settings. And so literally that development from 3 and under, if they're in an orphanage, they have network connections in their brain that just don't develop, and that's why they can't do well in school. That's why they have such huge behavioral issues. That's why their trauma affects them so greatly, and they can't function as normal adults. And so that's why 60% of them enter crime-related scenes and poverty. And so to end that would literally to put them in a family environment where they have one caretaker, and they can develop their identity, their belonging, and their purpose, which is actually what happens in a family unit. And so also here, if you're in an orphanage, it's highly unlikely for you to then transition into reintegration. It's getting better, but it has been highly unlikely for the child to move, their case to move forward at all. They just stay in the orphanage. And so for them to either have the potential to be reintegrated or to be adopted is just highly unlikely. In foster care, it has been tons better. It still needs to get a lot better, but while they're waiting for that permanency, they need to be in a family. They need to be in a community. They need to learn how to go to the grocery store and go to a bank, and how a family sits and eat dinner together instead of eating in a cafeteria every day, every meal. So even though we may have this concept of broken foster care by our experience in the U.S., it still is very needed, highly critical for Honduras to have an alternative to orphanages. And so foster care is that alternative. And now with Identity Mission, we do raise up and train. We train in trauma. We train in attachment. All of those things, all of our foster families are trained in that, and they are Christian foster families supported by their local church, supported by their community. And so we are doing what we can to kind of prevent some of those things we've seen in the States. And so it really is the moment to be involved in a country developing foster care so that we can maybe prevent some of those issues that the States have. That's my dream, that's our prayer. Always there will be things that need to be bettered, but I feel like if we are doing this, what Orphan Myth is talking about, where we come together and we see the solutions that are working, and then we work towards increasing that and declining the issues that we're having, because most of them are because we're not having the support that we need as foster families or biological families. That's our other myth I wanted to break with you right there, that like, why would we build foster care in another country? And that's it, because the alternative is not okay. That we're providing that for children, and we would never want one of our biological children to step foot and ever have to even spend one night in the majority of the orphanages here in Honduras. And so, but we would love them to be cared for by a Christian family who's going to support and wrap around them in love. And so that is exactly what this campaign has been all about. And Orphan Myth has done an amazing job of doing some of the work in that for you. They've identified organizations like Identity Mission that are already doing family-based care services like this, making sure kids are growing up in a family so they don't have more trauma or more developmental delays and things like that, because that's been proven to be better for them. And so they've identified these organizations in the United States and then internationally as well that already have proven they're using the solutions that are best for kids and for vulnerable children and family. And so they've already done a ton of that work for you to know that your support and your time and efforts are going to go to a cause that's actually making an impact. And so as a Christian, it's our calling to be a part of this, but it's also our calling not to just say, oh, I helped with orphan care today. It's our calling to make sure, we want to know that the thing we're doing is actually going to make an impact, ongoing, that it's actually not doing harm, it's doing good. And so, we support family-based care because it's our calling as a Christian, locally and internationally, but then also we want to make sure we're supporting in a manner that uses our funds and our time in a way that's going to impact and make a lasting change, so that in 10 years, Honduras isn't where we've always have been. So the individuals and the churches that have been investing in these orphanages, I bet now, 20 years later, they feel like, they're still giving the same amount of money, they're still giving the money to the same thing, and it just feels like a crazy broken cycle, because they've seen 60% of those kids age out and not stay in Christ and not stay live as healthy adults. And so it probably feels like this crazy cycle. And so involving yourself in family-based care for that calling to the orphan and vulnerable child, you're actually going to see the results that you want your efforts to produce. You're going to know that it's cost effective. So just a quick caption of quick picture, for an orphanage of 40 kids annually or monthly, it's about $800 a month to support that kid. Now that does include their school, because usually their school is on campus, like we mentioned. They're usually getting like top-notch, supplies from the United States, things like that. So this is a well-run, have pretty much everything they need orphanage in Honduras. Is going to be about $800 per kid. Now that kid is still going to age out with issues because they've had so many different caretakers, and they haven't been integrated into their community. They've been within the walls, but they have everything they need: educational, physical, medical. So $800 a month. Now, in foster care, that looks like $25 a month. It literally only costs us $25 a month to accept a new child into our foster care program, and that's just based on what they need from Identity Mission for technical services and support for the family. That's not like a family stipend. That's just literally what we need for that one child. And so $25 a month keeps that kid in the foster care program as long as they need. Literally every monthly commitment of $25 a month that we get, we can say we can accept a new child into foster care. Every $100 a month commitment we get from a partner like yourself, we can say we can take on a new family preservation family and support that family for 2 years until they are independent. And so that's just 2 years. So you're investing $100 a month for 2 years to keep a family together, so they don't have to cross the border, so they're able to take care of their own children. Their children don't have to enter the system, and their children never have to suffer the consequence of growing up in an orphanage or in a setting that potentially has them entering crime and poverty later in life. So $25 a month. So $800 compared to $25, you're knowing your donation is reaching more children, preventing more children from all of those statistics, and having an impact, a quicker impact, because we're keeping them in a family. And so, as Orphan Myth has said, we just need each other to make this work. We found the solutions, but it feels like there's only a handful of us working in these solutions. So we're doing all that we can, but we literally just need the next person to tag on and say, that's my cause. I want to support kids and family and give them the family they deserve. Here's my effort, here's my donation monthly. And then that's the next kid we can take. So we need to grow from this handful of people that believe in family-based care and believe in good, healthy foster care and giving foster families the support that they need and foster children in the states the support that they need. Grow from this little handful to this huge community of believers that just say, I'm going to do my part and I'm going to encourage you to do your part. And together we can see these true solutions grow and expand and become what foster care and family preservation, biological family support is about. That it becomes what people hear. So the stories aren't few and far between of success, but they're the bulk of the stories. And so I believe that this participation campaign is all about that. I believe that it's all about if we get together, this can be our reality in several years. That foster care is working in the United States. Foster care has become the top care for vulnerable kids in Honduras and not orphanages, and that biological families have what they need so that they can actually care for their own kids and be healthy families. So that's what this is about. And you still have time. This campaign goes on till April 8th. So if you have not done anything about it yet, you still have plenty of time. It's simple, it's easy. Go on Orphan Myth, Facebook, Instagram, website. They have videos. Celebrities have been raising their voice, using their influence to walk alongside us in this. Share those videos from the celebrities, make your own video, tell about your own story and why you're raising your voice, and literally just talk to people. You're not going to offend anyone by saying, hey, do you want to join me in making sure kids have family like they deserve? We all can do a little part. $25 a month. Simple. Donate this one time during this campaign. Simple. Actually, let's just change our words and start talking good about foster care and what we can do to help it be better, and to give families the support that they need. And so till April 8th, obviously keep doing it afterwards, but this is the time that the resources are at your fingertips for you to be a voice and to share those things on social media, have a event at your church. And for Identity Mission, I'm going to put a link here that you can donate right away. Just go in and donate right now. Say, this is what I'm doing today, and then think on what you want to do the rest of the week and the rest of the year. As your thing that you're going to do to be an advocate for vulnerable children and families. So I'll give the link that you can donate, and then also you can go to Orphan Myth and you can even set up your own platform, fundraising platform. So you can say, okay, on Orphan Myth, choose Identity Mission. Then choose a local foster care organization as well, and say, for these two, I'm going to raise, 10 donors. And so we're not worried about the monetary amount. We're concerned with you telling the story to 10 people. And those 10 people get on and say, okay, I heard it, I believe it, I understand it, I'm going to give a donation this week. And so do that for both of those national and international organizations. Build yourself a platform. It's really simple. If you need assistance, just reach out and we can help you do that as well. But it's pretty simple. You just go right on orphanmyth.org, set up your platform, choose your organization that you're raising for, and then you just share and give people your link, and they'll donate, and you can see your goal reached this week before April 8th, and you doing your part. It's really neat to know that the Lord can use you to change lives in this manner, in a way that actually changes their lives for the better and keeps them in a family. So kids deserve family, guys. Let's do our part. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you have a good week. Thanks.